Okay, I think we can start. Hello and welcome everyone to our next Kubernetes online meetup with Ronnie Franchi. He'll be speaking today about managing infrastructure as code with automated resourcing in Terraform. My name is Caroline. I'm a marketing manager at Kubernetes, and I'm very excited that at least some of you are joining tonight, but we're still waiting for some more people to join. Yeah, I just want to make this intro very quickly. Just a few words about Kubernetes, who we are and what we do. Kubernetes is an IT software company within the cloud native environment, with its headquarters based in Hamburg. And currently we are a team of something over 50 employees, and we are really or extremely proud that we are one of the top 5 contributors to the Kubernetes project. In line with our strong commitment to open source and cloud native projects, especially with our products Kubernetes platform and Kube One, we want to empower IT teams worldwide to automate the management of Kubernetes clusters, regardless of the underlying infrastructure. And I guess this won't be too surprising now, but of course we are hiring, and so Kubernetes lovers, talented, motivated people are always welcome. So if you're interested in a new position, just check out our openings and contact us. So just 2 last things before I hand over to our speaker. If you have any questions during the presentation, please use the chat window so that we either can answer them straight away or in the Q&A session right after the talk. And in case you need to drop out earlier, no worries, we are recording the session. We will upload the replay to our YouTube channel, and we will send out the replay in the coming days. I hope you'll enjoy it, have fun, and now I'm passing on the word to Ronnie.
Thanks, Caroline. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for being here. So today's session, my name is Ronnie Franchi. I'm a principal engineer at M0. And today we're going to talk about automated resource tagging in Terraform using Terratag, which is a new open source project by M0. So before we start, just a little bit about me. Like I said, I'm a principal engineer at M0. I previously used to work for Sapiens Decision as a lead architect, which is a decision management tool built for the enterprise, and a technical advisor for PropTech Zone. So if you're in the property tech industry, that's a knowledge innovation center for property tech. Other than that, I'm an open source contributor. I've been contributed to over a dozen open source projects, mostly in the serverless framework and Terraform realm. So mostly around infrastructure as code, which is kind of what we do here at M0. That's just me. So today's agenda, we're going to set the baseline straight just to talk about why tagging, why is it important, why do cloud providers kind of make a push for it in different use cases. Then we're going to kind of bring up how tagging works in Terraform, what's great about it, what can be improved, and why we're introducing Terratag. And finally, we're going to talk about how we use the Terratag in N0. We're going to present some of the features that are built on top of Terratag as the open source, as a driving force for N0. And finally, we're going to end up having you ask some questions and me trying to answer those. So let's start off. So why is tagging important at all? Well, all cloud providers say yes. Basically, they all encourage you to use tags or labels if you're on GCP. AWS has like a 24-page guide about tagging best practices. Azure's one is even bigger. That's over 30-page long. And GCP has like 5 different articles about the virtues of labels and tags. And yes, they have both. And there's a slight difference between them. And so why is it important, and why do they stress that out? Well, tags can be used to identify resources used by individual teams or cost centers. They're also very helpful to distinguish between deployment environments. So if you, like most organizations, have production, staging, QA, tests, and you haven't split those up to different accounts, that's a great way to get a look into that. And we're going to talk a little bit about how it gets even more difficult as you look into dynamic environments. So if you basically want to have an environment per developer or per feature branch or pull requests, that you can't even spin up an account for each of those. So that can be even more tricky. Tags are even more helpful there. You can also apply different product versioning or state labels. So you can basically label your resources as version 1 of that microservice or version 2, or something that hasn't made it to production yet, or basically kind of use them as feature flags or identify which resources can be shut down or needs to be backed up. You can also assign owners to resources. So some organizations have multiple DevOps team and you need to know who owns which resources. So that's a great way to do that. They all encourage you to do that, really. AWS, GCP, all those major cloud providers encourage you to do that because that's pretty much the only way you can get access to cost allocation and billing breakdowns. If you don't do that, then you're basically stuck with pretty much no way to query and break down your cost other than what's the basic sum of it. It also helps to monitor resource groups via Stackdriver and GCP. Like we said, it helps you automate tasks such as resource shutdown, backup, teardown. So AWS has AWS Backup, which is a product that allows you to set up, let's say, backup on a daily, hourly, weekly, whatever cost. It supports S3 and DynamoDB and certain resources that they have. It's all based on tags, right? So you tell it which databases or which buckets to tag to back up based on the tag that is applied to it. So it's inherently built into those cloud providers. It's also a great way to control access to single tenant resources. So if you're an organization where basically you spin up an environment per customer or per tenant, that's a great way to kind of keep tabs of who owns or which tenant, which resources serve. So tagging, obviously, in Terraform has great support built in. So a simple example is this. You can see we've got a resource of an S3 bucket. It has a block of tags. It has a few of the examples that we've talked about, that I've mentioned just a few slides back, talking about the environment, right? So environment is production in this case, and backup is daily for this particular resource, and the owner is team 0. So that's pretty easy to understand, pretty easy to read, and pretty easy to apply to resources. Let's look at a more dynamic use. So you can use Terraform variables to kind of extract and reuse some of these values. So you can say the environment is based on the stage variable, and the owner is the deployer. So as I deploy, I'd be required to enter these variables, and that would basically apply these tags and these values based on which stage am I deploying to and who is the owner of that particular resource. Let's take a deeper dive and look at different providers. So different providers in Terraform have different syntax. It's great that you can, there is no abstraction between them, and that's completely fine. That's by design. But still, just so we can compare, here's an S3 bucket on AWS. Here's a storage bucket on Google. Basically, you can see that on AWS, there's a block. There is no equal sign, and it's called tags. On Google, it's called tags. There is an equal sign, so it's actually a map. So it's slightly different, but again, same concept, right? So if you have some resources on GCP and some of them on AWS, you need to apply different structure in order to label or tag them. And actually, even when you work within the same cloud provider, you still sometimes have different syntax. So this is, again, the bucket that we saw earlier from GCP. It has labels, their environment and owner, like we saw before. And here is a Google container cluster. And that actually, in this case, it's called resource label. So it has a completely different key in order to apply these tags. So that's also something you need to take into account. And the reason we're talking about it is kind of the motivation behind why we've built Terratag. So There's a tricky part there. Organization standards are very hard to maintain if not enforced. It means you need to work in order to enforce it. Basically, if you want to say my organization has to have this environment tag or label based on whatever provider I used, or maybe both if I'm multi-cloud, and all resources of a certain type has to have a backup label applied to it, so I know when to back it up. So it can be weekly or daily or hourly, but some sort of backup needs to be applied for me to comply with standards. So that, in order to enforce that, it basically means that everyone in the organization who has access to setting up cloud resources has to comply with these standards, and it's very hard to maintain and enforce. That also relates to actually applying changes. So Terraform, or infrastructure as code, is again just code. It means that like with any code, code repetition is pretty bad, and there's kind of no way to avoid code repetition while applying a certain set of tags across different resources. So you're going to have to repeat yourself, which means whenever you make a change, you need to make it in a bunch of places. And if you've got dozens of tags and hundreds of resources, that can be a little hard. What's more, there's all of this metadata that can obscure what's important. So as you describe your cloud resources, tags are not the main thing. These are metadata, like we said, that can be used for operational, business, and applicative needs. But that's not the main stage, right? We've given an example of like 3 or 4 tags, but as you get larger, you may find yourself having dozens of tags to manage, and that can obscure your infrastructure and code, and it's not necessarily something you want to always see there. Also, if you're already using infrastructure as code or only have resources deployed to AWS or GCP, and you haven't tagged them yet, then applying tag across an already set of existing resources is pretty hard. You're going to, again, like with changes, you're going to look for all of the resources and find a particular tag attribute based on the provider and based on the resource within the provider, and apply that particular tag. So that's kind of the tricky part of maintaining tags in Terraform, and that is why we've decided to come up with Terratag. So Terratag is basically a CLI tool allowing for tags or labels to be applied across an entire set of Terraform files. So you run it from the command line saying which tags to apply. It will basically generate a Terraform file where the certain tags that you have run in your command are injected to those tags. And it applies to Azure and GCP and AWS. And it's smart enough to know how to tag different resources. So you don't have to think about it, and you don't have to basically maintain all of these changes in your organization and enforce that. So again, use cases, pretty much all we've discussed before, right? You want to apply a stage. You want to say, this is production, this is staging, this is QA or dev, or this is a certain pull request to those resources. And that's very easy to do because you basically run Terratag just before you run Terraform apply, right? And create your cloud resources. So it's very easy to create automation tags and owner tags and single tenant tags, as we discussed before, and cost segmentation, which is a key thing. We're going to go back to that very soon. Terratag is 100% open source. It's available on GitHub. Sorry, that burst in. Sorry about that. So, like I said, Terratag is 100% open source. It's available on GitHub. It's already gotten pretty popular. We've only launched it like a couple of weeks ago. Please be sure to check it out. If it helps you, please star us. That's great. M0 decided to make this an open source and free to use and easy to adopt, allowing fast build cycles. This is kind of us trying to be part of the vibrant Terraform community. Obviously, Terraform is open source. We live it. We're built on top of it, and we always like to contribute back. As I've mentioned before, the entire M0 team is very hard working in contributing back to existing open source projects. And this is our first one that we're launching, and we're very proud of it. So if you be sure to check it out. Let's stop for a second and talk about how we use Terratag in M0. So we've come up with a few use cases before, but we've built it for our flagship product, which is M0. So before we talk about how we use that, let's take a second and talk about what is M0. and how does it use Terratag. So NF0 basically is a service allowing you for self-service environments for everyone without sacrificing cost and control. It means that we allow you to manage your team's dev, staging, and production environments and keep tabs on those. We allow to control who in the R&D team can create new environments. So not only that you can maintain and keep tabs of your static environments, we also allow you to kind of create dynamic environments. So that makes preview environments made very easy. So as you push code into new pull request, you'll get a new dynamic environment in NF0. All of these environments, so it's very easy to just give everyone the keys to the kingdom and say, hey, here's self-service. But that's not what we're about. Environments are governed by your policies. So we allow you to set up strict policies into saying how many environments are allowed to which team, what's the budget, and how much should they cost. And that's kind of a hint to Terratag. So we allow you to have the DevOps team have tight control on who can spin up how many environments, when, how, and when should they shut down in case they outmaneuver the policies. You get complete visibility and audit into your environments, and you can track actual cost per environment across cloud providers. So no matter if you cross cloud, we can tell you how much an environment costs. And again, this is a hint to Terratag. This is all powered by your existing infrastructure as code. You don't need to do anything else. It's built for Terraform and much more. So even if your infrastructure as code is not exclusive to Terraform, you can check us out. You can add hooks around it and whatnot. Right, so going back to the original question, how do we use Terratag in NF0? Well, NF0 uses Terratag behind the scenes as you deploy. Basically, we inject tags to your cloud resources to automatically provide actual cost per environment or per project. This helps you set up some powerful automation or budget control through NF0, and you can know how much an environment costs, again, across cloud provider. You also get to unlock some cost trends and insights, like which deployment had impacted our cost, when, by whom, and which resources were changed. So again, this is all made available via Terratag. And if you want to know how much an environment costs, this is the NF0 dashboard, and you can see a bunch of pull requests that we have opened. You can see our dev environment. And you can, on each one of those environments, you can actually get a zoom in and see how much is the total cost of that environment. We've talked about unlocking cost trends and insights. So Terratag combined with NF0 allows you to read those dynamic tags that were applied by Terratag and let you know exactly how much or where the cost trend has changed for an environment. So all of those green lines you see are basically deployments made through NF0. You can see this dashboard in NF0 showing you a query basically of the tags applied by Terratag and showing you this in particular environment, which again, this example is only on AWS, but it shows you how this environment trend has changed. And again, it works cross cloud, so you can see this trend also across different cloud providers for the same environment. So if your environment spent across cloud, that's a great way to keep tabs on costs. If you're looking to learn more about NF0, please head over to our website. It does a lot more than just what we saw here. That's nf0.com. And if you're looking to learn more about Terratag, please head over to github.com/nf0/Terratag. Again, 100% open source. Feel free to use it, comment in, open issues, fork, open pull requests. Your feedback is very welcome. And if you like us, again, please star us. I think that leaves us with time for Q&A.
Well, in the chat window, I can't see any questions, but maybe there are still some questions.
Okay.
Okay, seems like there are no questions, but I'm sure if there still should come up some questions, they always can reach out to you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so thank you very much for joining tonight. As I've mentioned it before, we will upload the recordings to our YouTube channel and we will send it in the Meetup group so you can watch it whenever you want to. Yeah, thank you, Ronnie, and hope. Oh, okay.
I'm seeing a few questions coming in.
Okay, good. You can see them, yeah?
Yeah, I'm looking now. So Mohan asks how we use conditions with regarding to the tags. So if you're looking to say, I'd like to apply tags in certain conditions, there are a few ways to do that. One, in Terraform, you have a built-in way to basically condition which tags blocks are applied or not. But when you're using Terratag, and if you want to apply them across the stack, you can basically code that before Terratag. So you can say, apply this condition based on whatever it is your condition is based on, that you can run Terratag with these values. If that's something else, run with those values. Yeah, if that's what you meant. If not, I'd be happy to answer if you want to refine that question. Rob says, this is great. Thank you, Rob. Much appreciated. For any dynamic resources, does Terratag help? Shailendra, I hope I pronounced that right, asks, for any dynamic resources, does Terratag help? I'm not exactly sure what you mean there, so if you want to refine your question, go ahead now. But if you're asking whether if you basically create dynamic resources using Terraform for basically apply Terraform again on a different environment, yes, it can help. That's the key thing. You can run Terratag right before applying and add individual tags based on whatever logic you need across the entire stack. I hope that helps. If not, I'm sorry, and I'd be happy if you can refine that question. All right, sure. Do you have any other questions? All right. Guess not.
Okay, so thank you very much again. And
Absolutely.
see you all soon again. Have a nice evening.
Bye, everyone.